We've got a caller on the line that tells Sammy that he is kind of at ground zero in terms of the hurricane in North Carolina. His name is Steve. He's been holding for a minute, and I'm so glad that he called us to relate to us what is happening on the ground. Steve, good afternoon. I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, we're making it. It's a lot of hardship and a lot of frustration. Just before you came on the radio, they just passed with another convoy. I live in Fairview, North Carolina, which is about 7 or 8 miles southeast of Asheville. And if you look on a map, if you draw a triangle from Asheville to Black Mountain to Lake Lure and then back up to Asheville, that seems to be ground zero for where the very worst happened. I know a lot of our people up towards Spruce Pine and then East Tennessee got hit too. But as far as just sheer numbers of fatalities and just the logistical nightmares, we're right in the center of it. I guess we felt like we had been forgotten for about 3 or 4 days after it happened. There was no way to get any information in or out of North Carolina, of Western North Carolina, and the sense of isolation was just unreal for everybody. We didn't start seeing outside help until probably well into day 2, early into day 3, and most of that was just out of county people from North Carolina. The next day I started seeing convoys from, I've seen New Jersey State Police, Illinois State Police, New York State Police, Virginia State Police, National Guard. The United States Army was landing Chinook helicopters inside of our house. They were landing we live just above the elementary school, and they were landing in the parking lot, carrying people out of the really severely affected areas, which is about probably another 2 or 3 miles above our house. We live in a community that goes kind of up a mountain from Asheville, and it levels out into a valley where Fairview is, and then you go up a steeper mountain and cross that and drop down into Back Cave and Lake Lure. And that area just past our house goes up into almost like a box valley. And we had 3 or 4 major mudslides that started at the tops of the mountains and came down the hillsides. And all of those mudslides joined together and then went down the river into Fairview. And when those mudslides and the river came down, it happened literally instantly, and it took everything in its path, houses, cars, homes, I mean, anything that was in its path. The destruction is, there's stuff that's not ever going to be there.
Yeah.
Again, they announced the body count's going up every day. We're at 60 in Buncombe County, which is the county where we live, and over 50 of those are from Fairview, and we've lost 10 close friends and family so far. The worst part of the whole thing is that the areas up in that valley, all of the roads were severed in multiple places by these avalanche mudslides. So there's whole chunks of road that are missing. So the only way you can get in, you have to go as far up as you can go on vehicle, and then your name has to be on a list at a checkpoint. And then if your name's on the list, if you have business up there, family up there, property up there, or if you're responding to help, if they let you in, then you have to go on foot or by ATV or horse to get to that area. The only other way in is by helicopter, which is what they've been doing too. they've been running 8 or 9 helicopters a day, and now they're probably running up to 20 a day, carrying stuff in, stuff out, people in, people out. The search and rescues during the day, they start very early in the morning. The convoys come up the mountain from Asheville. They pass our house. They go on up. They spend all day there until dusk, and then they all come back down the mountain. It's too dangerous to do anything at night. People are frustrated. We have no water. We have no power. We have no cell service. And no projected time when that'll happen. There's a helicopter going over right now. It's a Black Hawk going back out. I think it's just something that has never happened before and probably will never happen again in any of our lifetimes. And it caught everybody, including the government, completely off guard. We were looking at it. I'm a pilot. Actually, I fly hot air balloons, but still a pilot.
Right.
We were looking at why this happened, and all of our weather friends, basically what happened, a front came through from the west through Nashville, and like they normally do, and it stalled out over the mountains, and we got 11 inches of rain, and that was in the 2 days before Helene hit. That was when Helene was still out in the Gulf. So then Helene came in, and it butted up against that front and stalled out over us and dumped another 30 inches of rain. So we get 40 inches of rain in about a 3-day period. And this area is just not built for that. It's I don't know how much you're familiar with up here in western North Carolina, but I mean, it's, on a good day, it's remote in areas. But it's just completely severed whole areas from other people and other, ways of doing things.
Where are you now, Steve?
I'm sitting in a parking lot on the side of the road. There's one cell tower in Buncombe County that's working. They're starting to put up mobile towers around town, but that's down in Asheville, like in the city. So I'm sitting on the side of the road at a spot where everybody else parks. There's probably 15 or 20 cars sitting here right now. This is where everybody comes to communicate. I hadn't been able to obviously listen to your show every day in the normal world, and I used to live in Nashville. I'm a retired police officer. I've called you before on other issues. I moved back up here a couple of years ago when my grandson was born, so I could be close to them, and so we've got my daughter, her husband, my grandson, my ex-wife, my in-laws. We all kind of live like in one little area, and luckily we were up on a hill. We had 7 trees down on our property and couldn't get off our property for a day and a half. We had to cut our way out. We were standing in the window watching the trees come down, and we were trying to see if it was going to hit the house or not. It was, we thought the storm was going to be the worst of it, but actually it's what came after that's been, the hardest. But I tell you what, I've had a lot of friends. I've had some friends that live in Cordele, Georgia. They're balloon people. And they drove all the way up the other day and met me in Hendersonville with a load of gasoline, water, chainsaws. I mean, they just had a whole big truck loaded down, and we offloaded it onto my trailer. I think it took me longer to get to them in Hendersonville than it took them to drive from Georgia to North Carolina. Just trying to, pick your way through. The normal routes are not normal anymore. You drive down one way, and then it's blocked, you got to turn around, and you got to try another way, and then you're asking people, and
Is Fairview, just to help people that don't understand that part of the world, is Fairview's basically a suburb of Asheville? Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the thing is, I guess what you'd call the suburbs of Asheville, each one of them lie just outside the city, but we're all in different valleys, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I get it. I get it.
So Swannanoa and Black Mountain, they're in one valley, which is the same valley that I-40 runs through. If you were going through Asheville to, like, Raleigh, you would go through Asheville and then Swannanoa and then Black Mountain. Fairview, our valley goes southeast toward Lake Lure, and then you have, to the south, you have Skyland, Arden, Hendersonville, Fletcher, which is all directly south of Asheville, and then you have valleys to the west and the north, where Canton and Weaverville, respectively, are. So everything's divided. So even in a normal world, if you're going from Fairview to Swannanoa, you got to go into town, drive around the mountain, and then go back out the other way. You know, there's no straight path any time. But when this happened...
Go ahead.
When this happened, when you only have 2 or 3 routes that you can normally take in a normal world, and those routes are closed, then you're really, done for.
I'm trying to keep myself composed, Steve, because I'm embarrassed that the rest of the country is not more focused on what you guys are going through. I'm embarrassed that we're talking about other stuff and we ought to be talking about you. I really am. And I know that's not why you called, but I think it's so easy for us over here in Nashville to just get so focused on what's going on in the world that we forget that our fellow Americans are suffering mightily right now and they need help. Have you seen help from your state? Have you seen help? I mean, where's the help coming from? Have you seen FEMA?
I personally have not seen FEMA yet. I have heard they're here, and I have heard that they are at certain locations up toward Asheville. We have not gotten that yet. We were told for the last 3 days that they're coming to Fairview School. They're coming to Fairview School over and over, but now they do have, the state has set up a place there. They got a potable water tanker truck, and you can get potable water. You have to bring your own containers, and it's like there's a limit on it and so forth. I'll tell you how I handled this as a former cop. So what I did was I just went into priority mode. We just had to do triage. So the first thing I had to do, the first day, the entire day after the storm, my sole priority was to get my hands on gasoline. Right. Because you couldn't go anywhere without gasoline, and there was no power, and there was no way to pump gas out of the ground. And so my friends in Georgia brought gas up, and that got me kind of jump-started on gas. And then after that, I had to drive quite a ways to find gas stations that were open. There were lines everywhere, and most of them were taking cash only. Of course, their credit cards were worthless when this happened. Just today is the first day I've actually used a card to pay for anything. It was cash only. Right. Well, if you don't have cash, and I never carry cash, there's no ATMs in service.
Right.
So we had to borrow cash from a family member that did keep cash. And so gas was the first day. The second day, the priority was water. We had to have water. So I went out, and I have another friend of mine who's another hot air balloon pilot, and he lives on the other side of town, and he has a well that was operational. So I went over there, and he had an 80-gallon tank, like a big square tank. And so I filled it up on my trailer and drug it back to Fairview, so we're using that, which is better off than most people have. I've got that sitting in front of the house. And then the next day, the priority was food. I had to drive almost 40 miles to get to a grocery store where I didn't have to wait in line for hours. And then 3 or 4 hours drive back. I bought food for 3 families and came back and, dropped them off. There's a lot of churches that have been...
Steve, can you hold on just a second? I hate to ask you to do this.
That's fine.
I mean,
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, God bless you. Steve is talking to us from Fairview, North Carolina. He is in the epicenter of the hardest hit areas, just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Let me tell you, he just said a mouthful there. You know what helps you survive a natural disaster? And if we don't know this already, we are learning this. And anyone that's been through a natural disaster, a hurricane, a tornado, or something along these lines, flooding, you know what's beneficial? A gas car. You know what's beneficial? A gas stove, a gas water heater, a gas chainsaw, and cash money. You know what's freaking useless? An electric car, debit card, a city bus, or the government.